Okay, hello and welcome everybody. This is the first episode in Programming Map where I'll be teaching you how to program. We're going to be using Java, and in this first episode what you'll see us doing is just making a quick Hello World program just to introduce some of the main concepts of Java. And so, without further ado, why don't we dive right in? What I'm doing at the moment is just setting up a Java project. I'm using a program called Eclipse in order to do this. If you want to use Eclipse, it'll be in the description below. But if not, just use whatever you like to compile Java for you. I like Eclipse because it makes things nice and simple. And so, here we go. Now, one thing to remember about Java is that it is object oriented, which means everything you do has to be included in a class. So, for now I'm just going to brush over that quickly, but in further episodes I will go more into depth on what classes are, for example. So, if we make a new class, we're just going to name this class Hello World. Now, one important thing to remember here is that you must name the class the same name as the file that you're creating. And so if I was to change the name of the class in this window now, it would ask me to change the name of the package we have over here. Okay, and as you can see, as I said, everything has to be done in the class. So what we've got here is a class just called Hello World. And one thing that we do have to include is a public static void called main. Now what this is the entry point that Java will choose to enter into our program. It will look through the whole program. When it finds the main function, this is where it will start. The fact that it's public means that anything outside of this class can access it. Static means it doesn't have to create an instance of the Hello World class in order to be able to access the function, and a void just means it doesn't give any return value. As you see in between the brackets after main, it says a string with 2 square brackets. That just means it's an array of strings, and we've named it args because that will be what we use if we use the parameters of this function. Okay, all we're going to be doing is just displaying Hello World into the box, the console box, sorry. And so the way we're going to do that is we're going to access the system class. And the way you do this is just type system. This will be with a capital S, and system spelled normally. You then put a dot. This tells it that you want to access a function within the system class, and we're going to be using out, which is a print string, and we want to use part of that print string, which we put another dot because we want to use a function in that print string, and we want to use a function called println. Now what this will do is this will print onto a new line whatever it is that we send this function, and the function we're going to be sending it is Hello World. So we're going to send it this string, and as you'll see, if I run it now, you'll see I'm using debug. This is just what I use when I run it, and as you can see at the bottom here we have Hello World, and that is how we will produce our Hello World program. Now another thing that we can do is we can store it in a string first, and we can use a local string, which is what I'll be doing at the moment. And the way I create a variable is just I put the name or the type of variable that I want. So in this example we've got string, space, and then the name of the variable, so I'm just naming it S, and then I will initiate it as soon as I create it, which means I'll just put equals, and then I will type our message straight into it. Now what this will do is this will initialize a string named S, and it will set a value of Hello World. And what we'll do is in the println function, we will now change the message just to say S, which is the name of our variable that we created a second ago. And when I run it, you'll see that it creates exactly the same thing. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be using a loop, and the loop I'm going to be using is called a while loop, and it will test that while I is less than s.length. Now what this will do is this will just search every time for a variable called I, which I will be making right now. We'll make an int called I and initialize it as 0. Now an int means an integer, which is just a whole number, which means you can't have a decimal point, and so that's why we use an int, because you're just increasing it by 1 every time. Our while loop tests that this variable we just created is less than the length of the string that we created a second ago. And So what we're going to do is, in order to make sure that we can exit this loop, we are going to increase I by 1 every time. The way we do this, we could do I equals I plus 1, but a quicker way of doing it is just an I with 2 plus signs after it. This will increase I by 1 every loop. Okay, now we need to make sure that we print it correctly. So in our print function, we're going to use S, but we're only going to print a character at a time. So we're going to do S dot, and we're going to use a function called char at. Now, what this refers to is the char is actually a shortened version of character, and at means we're going to pass it an index, and it will choose whichever character is at that certain index. So, for example, if we pass it 3, we will start counting at 0, so the H is 0, the E is 1, an L is 2, and the other L is 3. So we'll print this L here for 3. So what we're going to do is the index we're going to be passing it is I. And the reason we do this is when we run this, we will get a debug error. I'll explain that in a moment. But, 2 seconds. What you'll see, if I go back to our window, we have printed hello world. Now the reason it's done this is because I'm printing after I increase the I, whereas if I increase the I afterwards, now when I run it, we won't get a debug error, we just get an error. I'll explain in a moment. And you see that we have actually printed now hello world, each letter on a different line. Okay, so that's been the start of these tutorials. There will be a new one next week. Thank you for watching, and please check back next week for the next one. Thank you.